Hey guys, welcome to Cup of Fern. This is our monthly program online. We are a chapter of the Florida Native Plant Society. Our message and our mission is the conservation, preservation, and restoration of Florida native plants and native plant communities. For our members, just so you know, we are the chapter of the year. So we are celebrating our 10-year anniversary all year long. We are having special online outreaches, programs, etc. throughout the year. And if you happen to be a member, go ahead and report your volunteer hours. We are doing some volunteer work this weekend at a plant sale that is mask mandatory. So in case you're volunteering there, please go to our website, click on the icon and follow the instructions. If you happen to be a Couple of Fern member, your program tonight also counts towards your volunteer hours. So it just takes 2 minutes of your time. If you happen to be a Seminole Master Gardener and you are part of the Master Gardener program, this program qualifies towards your continuing education hours requirements. So please don't forget to log those hours. Tonight's program is 1 hour. And we have several more programs for the rest of the year. So come grow with us on your native plant journey. So we have events, field trips, workshops, virtual learning, which is more so now during COVID-19 than normal. Community gardening, internships, plant sales, environmental study areas. So we are a very eventful chapter, and if you happen to be in the region that we serve, we would love to have you. And simply go to Florida Native Plant Society, which is fnps.org. Click on where it says join, and then you can select Couple of Fern from the drop-down menu. They have different kinds of membership levels, so they'll have students, individuals, households, and even business level memberships. And then as far as the rest of the calendar for the upcoming month and a half, this Saturday, we have the Native Plant Sale at the Sanford Garden Club, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's a real small plant sale. We're really trying to maintain social distancing, masks are required, and we hope to sell out before the afternoon rain pattern sets in for the day. So small plant sale, come out, support our Native Plant Society, and if you happen to be a member and you have done pre-orders, be on the lookout for an email notification on that. You can pick up as early as Thursday morning. So that is another nod to social distancing. August 23rd, the following Saturday, we are having a 10-year anniversary celebration, and we're doing a memory lane chat. So our original founding members are going to revisit some of their cherished memories with us, and then we're going to store that in our video library as part of basically a digital scrapbook, per se. And September 14th, that's our next program meeting. It'll again be online on YouTube and Facebook, just like it is now. And it will be with Dia Laurence and Alex. And they'll be talking about emerging exotic invasive plants. So these are ones that are happening, that are new on the scene. You probably never heard of them, and you'd like to know how to report them and how to spot one. This program is for you. It's completely free and visible to all. September 14th. September 26th is our garden chat, and we've already received great interest on that, and it is identifying baby native plants. So when they're really small, you're wondering if it's a weed or an unwanted plant. This is a great webisode for you to kind of figure out, hey, this is a plant worth keeping. So it's from 4 to 5:30 p.m. and it'll be free online on Facebook and YouTube. And tonight we have our natural lands in CISMA, an overview with Allegra Buyer and Amanda Lindsay. So let me introduce you very briefly to Allegra and Amanda. So Allegra is a past biologist for the Florida Park Service. Upon graduating from New College of Florida with a degree in biology, she started her career working with exotics at Ravine Garden State Park. From there, she worked seasonal jobs in Alaska and Texas, and then came back to Florida as a biologist in Bobcat. She assisted exotic removals at 33 parks and trails and worked on restoration prescribed fires and listed species management. She completed her MS in ecological restoration through the University of Florida. Amanda Lindsay is a senior biologist for the Landscape and Natural Resources Department at the University of Central Florida in Orlando. Her duties include managing the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, also known as NPDES, Stormwater Compliance Program, and assisting with the urban tree canopy on the urban parts of campus, as well as land management activities in the 800 acres of natural lands that also belong to the university. So Amanda will be touching on services of the Central Florida Cooperative Invasive Species Management Areas, also known as CISMA, that encompass Orange and Seminole counties. She earned her bachelor's in science in 2011 from the University of Central Florida, where she studied environmental science. She is an ISA, which is the International Society of Arborists, certified arborist, and a qualified stormwater inspector through the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. So please welcome Amanda and Allegra to our program.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. All right, so I'll go ahead and get started. Hey everyone, my name is Allegra Buyer, and I am the Natural Resources Program Coordinator for the Seminole County Natural Lands Program. And I'm guessing most of you live in or at least familiar with Seminole County, but I'll go ahead and give you a quick background on this county. So it's the third smallest county in the state of Florida, but it's also the third most densely populated. So we have quite a lot of people here. The state average is about 300 people per square mile. And I'm not sure if anyone has any guesses for Seminole County, but it's actually almost 1,400 people per square mile in the entire county. So there are a lot of people in such a small area, but we've managed to conserve quite a bit. So if you look at this map here, all of the green is conservation land. So we have managed to preserve under a strict preservation about 20% of the county, about 44,000 acres. And this includes land owned by the state, the Water Management District, the county, and even a small bit of federal land. And here you can see a conservation overlay with all of the wetlands and flood-prone areas. And this adds up, it's not quite as strictly preserved, but there is some level of conservation on this. And you're actually looking here at about 50% of Seminole County. So you might, when people think about nature here, a lot of times they're thinking about our rivers, our springs, or our lakes, since we do have quite a lot of water resources here, but there's a lot more to the conservation efforts than just those water bodies. So I'd like to kind of run you through a few of the things that we're preserving and a few pictures of what we have here. So as native plant lovers, I'm sure you guys are familiar with live oaks and probably even the microhabitats that these trees support in their canopies. There's a number of species that depend on these oaks, including the resurrection fern that you see here, Spanish moss, orchids, bromeliads. Indigo snakes have been found on our properties. This is one of the rarest snakes in Florida, and it's the largest snake in North America. And it really depends on that upland habitat that we have across the county. Not only is the Econ-Lockhatchee River protected and classified as an outstanding Florida water, but its entire floodplain is protected as well. So if you're familiar with this river, you might know that even when it rains all the way down in Osceola County, this river can overflow its banks up here. And so the fact that we have the entire floodplain protected is pretty amazing to allow that natural hydrology. A number of conservation lands protect the area around the floodplain of this river, including our property, Econ River Wilderness Area, and the Little Big Econ State Forest. Scrub habitat, which we have at a number of our properties, is incredibly important. It provides habitat for a number of listed species and rare plants such as this scrub rosemary. It also provides excellent aquifer recharge for fresh water that we need across the state. And then it also provides a home for the gopher tortoise, a keystone species that provides shelter for over 300 other species in their burrows. So how did Seminole County acquire their properties for the Natural Lands Program? Well, we were able to achieve this with a mix of state and county funding. So you can see here are the state programs that we've been able to utilize over the years. The Carl program in the 80s provided funding for wildlife corridors, Preservation 2000 in the 90s, and then Florida Forever is the ongoing program. And through the Florida Communities Trust, we were able to acquire parts of Lake Horney in particular. We've used all of these over the years. On the county level, we were able to receive funding through 2 voter referendums. So in 1990, the voters of Seminole County first decided to fund the Natural Lands Program and to fund the acquisition of land through tax dollars. So over these 2 referendums, we were able to fund a total of $25 million, plus leveraging with grants and partnerships with other organizations. And we were able to acquire about 6,600 acres through these 2 methods. And we were even able to acquire sensitive areas such as near the Econ-Lockhatchee, Spring Hammock, which is one of the few wild places left in that urban interface, and then upland habitats in Geneva, Chuliota, areas like that. So if you're not familiar with our properties, here we have a map of the Natural Lands Program. If you haven't been to some of these, I would highly recommend. Each one has something special there. Some of them are a little better in the winter than the summer right now. A few of them are quite flooded, but each one has something different. So you can take a look at all of them on our website, find the trail maps, things like that. So our mission statement is not just for the preservation and management of these natural areas, while that is a very important part. We also want to provide passive resource-based recreation and environmental education. So when I talk about passive resource-based recreation, what I'm referring to is really a little to no impact recreation on the land. So us establishing these types of recreation and then users coming out are really impacting the land very little in their use of it. So hiking, horseback riding, canoeing, some levels of biking or mountain biking, and then things like fishing or wildlife viewing, bird watching, ways that people can enjoy the land without impacting it. The ability to recreate on our lands is extremely important, as people with a connection to our properties will be more inclined to support future conservation efforts. We have tried to increase accessibility in recent years at some of our properties and have constructed trails such as the one on the left-hand side at Econ River, and the trail and the boardwalk on the right to the overlook at Lake Harney are included in this effort as well as short trails at Black Hammock and Black Bear. And the importance of outdoor recreation, I'm sure as you guys know, has been really amplified this year as COVID has shut down many traditional sources of entertainment. While our properties have seen exponential increases in visitation over the last few years, even above that, we saw a 690% increase in visitors from March to May 2020. Local trails, programs, and parks also saw similar levels of use. So we've been a little busier. And so how do we really achieve this mission statement and get people onto our properties and learning while making it safe and good for the environment? So we have 3 branches to our program. We have resource management, we have education, and we have operations. So for the operations side, this is really about making sure that people can access our properties safely and securely. So a big part of that is making sure that the trails and the fire lines are maintained properly. So that way when you're hiking, there's no dead trees that might fall on you, there's no trees blocking the trails, and that the fire lines are maintained in a way that if a wildfire happens, we're able to defend that area successfully. So we have about 85 miles of fire lines and trails on our properties. So if you're driving from Orlando to Tampa, that's how much that we have one person to maintain every single year. And as you can imagine, there are constantly new trees falling, new plants growing, so it's constant maintenance. We recently purchased this piece of equipment. This is called a skid steer, and on the front of it is a mulching head. So that allows us to cut down bigger types of vegetation low to the ground, and we can use this both for our fire lines and for smaller areas, including the area at Spring Hammock that some of you have been working on to keep that vegetation low for fire hazard. And then some other aspects of that operations program include just fencing repair, security, keeping an eye on the properties. While we don't have too many problems, there are folks that will try to drive off-road on our properties, or they'll there are occasional issues with poaching or vandalism, so we just try to keep an eye out for any emerging problems before they become too serious. All right. So now we're coming to my role within the program, which is resource management. So the main components of my job are really land management planning, monitoring, prescribed fire, and invasive species removal. So planning is maybe not the most exciting part, but it's what really ties the rest of my job together. So each property has a land management plan, and this is really the guiding document for land management for the next 10 years on the property. If you're curious, these are available on our website, and I am currently writing 8 of them this year, so you will see some updated plans soon. And then even though I have this overarching 10-year plan, it doesn't go into the weeds too much of the details. So I also formulate annual plans for other aspects of the program, including burning, invasives, and mechanical treatment. So this both allows me to consider what the priorities are for the year at the start of the year to give me a framework for what I want to work on. But I'll also have thought about an alternate strategy in case a project falls through or more money becomes available. That doesn't happen all the time, but it's quite exciting when it does. So monitoring helps shape our plans, as we use monitoring to determine what land management activities are most appropriate where. So our monitoring plan has changed over the years as we've established baseline data for most of the properties. Through the early 2000s, most of our efforts were really focused on what species, oops, sorry about that. Got ahead of myself there. So in the early 2000s, most of our efforts were really focused on what species we were finding on each property. So we just wanted to know all of the plants and all of the animals that we had on each property. Once we had that data, we can focus more on certain species that we're concerned about, like some of the state listed or state threatened species. So gopher tortoise monitoring is really one that we've been able to keep up with the longest. And currently we conduct burrow surveys. So we kind of walk different management zones and just see how many burrows we have that are active versus inactive, and if it maybe is increased or decreased in previous years. And really we try to do that before and after mechanical treatment, before bringing heavy equipment through the area, and then after a prescribed burn. So this monitoring has actually helped us receive a number of grants related to some work I'll talk about later. We also do try to conduct annual listed plant monitoring. So when we have a listed plant on a property, at least go out when it's in bloom to make sure that it's still there, see if we can tell if the population is increased or decreased. And then photo points are one of my favorites. They're a really great way to show progress. Instead of just looking at data, we can use a picture of that same area over time to show changes. And I do have an example of this later in the PowerPoint. And lastly, we conduct 2 BioBlitzes a year. So what we do is we invite experts from the university. So folks that work with Amanda, we'll invite some agencies like the Park Service, the Forest Service, that are experts in their field to help us determine what species are present during that week. So we'll identify every species that we possibly can during that week on a property. So we do 2 of these a year, one in the spring and one in the fall. And so it's about a 5-year cycle that we cover each of our properties with these BioBlitzes.
That's great. And let me jump right in here. We have a question from Joy Taylor. Just going to read it out for you, Allegra. She says, not sure if this information will be available immediately, and if not, an answer later would be helpful as well. What is the budgeted cost for trail maintenance, and is that cost offset by any of the funding the county has been able to acquire? For cities and communities looking to expand local trail systems, is there some way we can find resources to budget the costs or offset the cost with state funding programs?
You know, I'll be honest, that's one that we struggle with as well, because we have some leftover trails at some of our properties that we didn't install, and so we don't maintain specifically because we don't have the time or money to maintain them either. I don't know what our budgeted cost is for it. And I'm not sure about funding for that either. I don't know if you've heard of anything, Amanda, but if you can save all these comments and questions for me as well, I will come back to them or even try to provide resources later. So if you can have people leave their contact information.
Absolutely. Joy, if
Yeah.
you're listening in, you can definitely send us a quick email and I can connect you with Allegra.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the biggest problem isn't putting in the trails, it's maintaining them over time. And we do have some trails that we have that are specifically maintained by volunteers. The Florida National Scenic Trail goes through one of our properties and volunteers maintain that one. Yeah,
Awesome. And Joy says, thank you so much.
great. All right. Okay, so next I'd like to discuss invasive species, so as this is a big part of my job. And I'm sure most of you have been to at least one of our properties, and you've probably seen some sort of an exotic or invasive species. And I know you guys have had some webinars on this in the past, and we'll probably have more soon. So I'm not going to go into detail about what an invasive species is or why we're removing them. But instead, I want to focus on how I plan and prioritize my invasives work. So what I do when I think about this each year or as I'm writing the plan is, the first thing you have to consider is what species are present on your site. We may have a lot of non-native species on each site, but only some of them are actually going to be a problem on that site, and only some of them are really going to be possible to remove. So the FLEPC, the Florida Exotic Pest Plant Council, soon to be known as the Florida Invasive Species Council, I know a lot of acronyms, I apologize, puts out a list every 2 years that looks at what plants are the biggest threat to native plant communities in Florida. And so if a species is on this list, I automatically know that it is almost definitely going to be a problem for me at some point. If there's only a few plants, awesome, let's hop on it right away, remove that plant, and then hopefully don't have to worry about it again. But sometimes, and usually if it's on this list, it's usually a little more widespread. So from there, I kind of look at the life history characteristics. If it's a grass, do I need to treat it 5 times a year? Do I only need to treat it once a year? If it's a tree, maybe I can go out there once every 3 years and treat the entire zone because it's not going to produce viable seeds every year. And then also look at how big and dense the infestation is, as well as the habitat and the location of this infestation. So you can see in this picture, we have a big patch of cone grass. It's quite dense. You see some pines, you see some palmetto. So it's in some level of natural habitat, but it's also, you can see that road in the background. There's some urban interface there. So this was probably more of a disturbed area. I do plan on treating this patch in the fall, but I wouldn't say it's the highest priority patch that I have on my properties due to that disturbance and the proximity to a road. And then I do always consider if listed species are impacted. If there's a state threatened, a state endangered plant in the area that may be quickly taken over by this species, that's one that I really want to hop on quickly. That's one I want to remove. And lastly, and unfortunately, sometimes most importantly, is time and resources. Do I have the time to treat this plant? Do I have the resources to treat this plant? Can we feasibly remove it without spending so much time on this that we ignore everything else? So once I've kind of thought about this for each of the plants on my properties or each of my properties, I kind of come up with a framework for what type of removal is best. So volunteers have been incredibly helpful for us. I know some of you have come and helped us at Spring Hammock, removing Caesar's weed in those bags in this picture here. Same at Black Bear. Some plants are great for mechanical treatment for hand pulling. And in that regard, and especially if the area is close to a parking lot, it's easy to access and it's easy to come back to over and over again. Those are great for volunteers. And I love when we can get people out working on this too. Our staff will mostly focus on the harder to reach areas, and they're really smaller maintenance treatments. So a lot of times it involves herbicide. Can we mix the chemical, get to the property, get out to this area and do a good treatment that day, come back and clean everything up. And so we focus on those types of treatments on all of our properties. And lastly, unfortunately, there are some larger projects that we really can't hit with volunteers and we really can't hit with staff because they're such big acreages, it's such big infestations, and they're really important intact habitats that we need to help preserve. So for those, we'll try to bring in contractors. They can cover large areas, they have large amounts of staff, and these people know how to identify plants. So we've been really lucky in the last 2 years FWC funds projects across the state for invasive plant removal, and they have probably funded projects for us over at least the last 10 years every year. And this year they're going to fund 4 projects. So they're funding projects at Spring Hammock, at Black Hammock, at Geneva, and Lake Jessup. So I'm really excited for that work. And I know I'd like to work with you guys more at Spring Hammock in the future. So we're going to work on that program over the next year. And as you all know, one of the contributing factors to invasive plant establishment is using non-native plants in landscaping activities. So educating visitors about the importance of native plants and how they can be used in landscaping instead of invasive species has been a great partnership between the Couplet Fern chapter and the Natural Lands program. So if you're not familiar with this picture, it is the native plant garden outside of the Ed Yarborough Nature Center. And we really appreciate the effort that you guys have put into this garden over the years and the educational opportunities that it allows. So I just wanted to thank you guys real quick for that. Yeah, we really love it. And so invasive plants is only one small part of the restoration work that we do. And a lot of it is about restoring natural processes that humans have kind of messed up as they've tried to develop Florida. So these pictures are from Lake Harney, where when we acquired the property, the original owners had built ditches and levees and pumps to drain that floodplain. And one of our biggest priorities was restoring the natural hydrology. So we worked with FDOT and St. John's Water Management District. Yes, it is a great looking garden. We worked with those 2 agencies to help basically make holes in the levees so that water could flow through naturally. So that was a really great thing that we were able to do and restore hydrology on one property. And probably one of the biggest natural processes that we spend a lot of time trying to restore is fire. And so fire has been a normal disturbance for habitats in Florida for thousands of years. Many of the plants and animals have adapted to fire, and they rely on these areas with regular burning. So we conduct prescribed burns, not just for ecological impact, but also for fuel reduction and to prevent more catastrophic wildfires. As you saw, Seminole County is quite developed, and a lot of our properties have houses right on the boundary, or even neighborhoods on the boundary. So we want to make sure that people can enjoy these lands and that they'll be safe for our neighbors as well. So here in Seminole County, what we have done is we've made a partnership with public safety. So we organize and manage the burns, and then the Seminole County firefighters will provide the equipment and the crew to conduct the prescribed burns together. So that's worked really well for us over the past, I guess 20 years probably, as we've had that agreement now. So that's been great. And one of the reasons we've had to restore this process of natural fire, this fire regime, is because a lot of the landscape saw fire exclusion in the previous century. So you guys might have heard we're trying to reduce the smoky, prevent fires, talk about more about good fires instead of preventing all fire. So it really leads to overgrown habitat. This is one of our photo points at Lake Proctor. You can see on the left-hand side how thick that scrub is. And when it becomes that overgrown, it can actually be harder for many upland plants and animals to survive in what was their original habitat. So in an effort to restore, we would love to just reintroduce fire, but that's difficult when you look at something like this. Even if we could get that to burn, which would be incredibly difficult to do, I'm sure you can imagine it would be a very dangerous situation for everyone on the ground and probably for our neighbors as well with how tall those trees are. So what we had to do is we had to come in and reduce the fuel height first. So we used equipment similar to what you saw earlier, the skid steer with the futon head to bring everything down to a manageable height. We basically mulched it up, as you can see on that right-hand side. And then we were able to burn after that.
We have a question from one of our viewers.
Yeah.
She writes, do you ever do prescribed burns on or near trails?
Yes, we absolutely do. And what we'll do is, because our properties are so small, we actually just shut the property down for the day to maintain safety. And then we may shut it down for the next day or two as well, depending on if a lot of the fuels are still burning, if there are any hazard trees after our burn, like a dead tree near the trail that we're concerned. So we want to cut that down before we let people back. But a lot of our trails go through natural habitat, and they still depend on that natural fire process. So yep, we absolutely conduct around trails, but we will close the property so you won't be hiking and through a fire. Yeah. So here I have, this is a photo point from about 3 years after we conducted the mechanical treatment and the prescribed fire. While it's still in the process of restoration, you can see that the vegetation has come back. That's always a big concern we get when we mulch everything. You know, people think that we've killed everything, and absolutely not. It's certainly not what we want to do either. So this is at a much more manageable height for future burns. And if we're unable to restore the natural fire process, at least we've brought back some level of disturbance for these areas. So here we've had 2 projects this year. We've done Chuliota Wilderness Area, and we've done Black Hammock Wilderness Area. So if you're out on any of these properties and you see this, or you saw this earlier this year and we're concerned, that's what's happening. So this is a restoration process that we're working on. We were already able to burn about 10 acres at Chuliota this year. At this point, because of the sensitivity to pines to fire, starting in around August through November or December, we're probably done burning in a lot of these areas until then. But we will try to burn these zones next year. And so really, we're only able to do this work if the public supports us, and education and knowledge are key so that people see how important these properties are and what we provide. So we have 2 different educational centers. There's the Environmental Studies Center at Spring Hammock that was founded in 1970 and is still operating today. It's a new building, I think. But they bring out, that's run by the school board, and they bring out thousands of kids every year to teach them about the environment. We run the Eddie Arboro Nature Center at Geneva Wilderness Area. That's where my office is based. And we have a number of programs throughout the year. We bring school groups out. We run an eco camp in the summer. We have a winter break and a summer break camp. So that's a big part of our work is educating people, and especially children, about how important the environment is. So I'm going to leave you guys with a few pictures and then send you off with Amanda, who's going to talk about a lot of the partnerships that we use in Central Florida to get this work done.
Awesome.
All right.
All right. I guess I'll just let you know next when I need to go next. So basically what I'm here to talk to you guys about, which I'm sure a lot of you are already aware, is who works on invasive species in our area. And it's such a large, broad problem. Anyone who works in land management is going to be dealing with these species, so we can allow our native plants to flourish. We have to try and fight against some of these invasive invaders that are trying to take over our natural lands. So a few of the local programs here in Florida and nationally. So we have FISP, which I'll talk about all of these in the next few slides, but we have FISP, we have the Central Florida Cooperative Invasive Species Management Area, which is a mouthful, so we just call it the CISMA. So we're the Central Florida CISMA. And then there's FLEPC and the USDA. So USDA is going to be the national umbrella, and then FLEPC is the Florida branch. So then we also have IFAS. So through UF, the University of Florida, there's the IFAS arm, which is kind of their extension program. So there's a lot of great resources through IFAS as well. Okay, next. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the noxious weed list. So this is through the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. So that's FDACS. So they have a federal and state noxious weed list. So federal meaning nationally, and then each state has its own noxious weed list as well. So this is going to list all of the plants that are designated as injurious to agriculture, horticulture, or natural resources. So if it causes an issue to our conservation and natural lands, that's going to be on the list. If it is a hindrance to some of our horticultural practices, or if it causes issues with some of our food production, then those are all going to make that noxious weed list. And that's just kind of to get the word out to people on what these plants are. So if you're not sure, maybe you're trying to plant a garden, or you don't know what this plant is that you found on your natural land, you can take a look at this list to see if this plant is on there, and then you'll know how to go from there. So there's also regulatory on these plants. So these cannot be transported and they can't be spread. So it's actually illegal to move these plants. And so they provide management options for these plant species, and you can look any of those up on plants.usda.gov. And it's kind of cool to look around and see what invasive species different states are dealing with. And then on the national level, how many plant species we actually have that are invasive here. It's pretty crazy. All right, I'm going to go to next slide. So FLEPC is, I believe it's still functioning as FLEPC, but we're working on changing over to FISC. But for now, it's still the Florida Exotic Pest Plant Council. And so the goal of FLEPC is to support the management of invasive exotic plants in Florida's natural areas by providing a forum for the exchange of scientific, educational, and technical information. So through FLEPC, we've produced the FLEPC exotic plant list, which is kind of a more local plant list. So all of the different CISMAs get together and work on their FLEPC exotic plant list for the different areas. And this exotic plant list can be used for various different management reasons. I know that we use it at UCF when we apply for the FWC. There's an invasive plant removal fund that you can apply for conservation areas, and we apply for it almost every year. And the plants that you treat, that you can apply for treatment for, have to be on the FLEPC exotic plant list. So it's a helpful local document for people and land managers trying to apply for help with the removal, because these pesky plants are so hard to keep up with that sometimes we can't afford the funding to work on them within our local budget. So having that FWC assistance has been really great at keeping back our invasive species here at UCF. And I know that Seminole County typically applies for it as well. And it's actually kind of a fun meeting every year because you get to see all the land managers that are battling exotics in your area and catch up with them and apply for funding. So the invasive species world kind of brings people together. All right, next slide. So FISP is the Florida Invasive Species Partnership. So this is kind of the umbrella agency that brings together other agencies. So the Park Service, different counties, different City of Orlando, UCF, there's all kinds of different agencies that get to work together, FWC, all types of, all of the different management and state funded and county funded agencies kind of partner together through FISP to think locally and act neighborly. So the goal of FISP is to connect private landowners and public land managers with invasive species expertise and assistance programs across boundaries. So it kind of provides an area for people to gather and maybe find information or funding for invasive species that they're trying to remove from their property, or to learn how to remove them. So it kind of puts the public in touch with people who are professionals as far as invasive species removal and management goes. So it's a cool partnership agency. So there's the landowner assistance program, which provides cost share programs, grants, and technical assistance. So it's a great program just for bringing people together and battling the invasive species that we might have on our properties. So next slide, and then we're going to talk about the CISMA. So CISMA functions under FISP. So you can see in this map here, there's all these different CISMAs across the state. So the Central Florida CISMA is Seminole County and Orange County. So the two counties work together, and I know that our CISMA, we plan every year a grass workshop to inform professionals or the community. It's usually a free workshop, and then it'll be a whole day workshop, and we teach about grass identification and the different parts of the grasses, because grasses are really like a thing of their own as far as identification goes. I've been to the grass workshop as probably 5 times, and I'm still definitely nowhere near a novice grass ID expert, but I definitely pick up something new, and it's great to get involved with the people that are really knowledgeable in this kind of niche area of plant ID. They can really tease through like the cool parts of botanizing on grasses. So we are actually going to be holding it virtually this year. I believe in October. We have a meeting next week to talk about planning it, but it'll be our first virtual workshop. So stay tuned. We'll be able to host more people at the workshop this year. It typically sells out every year. We reach capacity, and there's a waiting list. So we'll definitely try to get that information out to you guys whenever we have more data on that. But it's a fun workshop that we put on every year. And we also meet and talk about the Flepsy species. So we meet with different land managers from our area to find out if there's any new plants that we need to bring up and possibly get on the Flepsy list or get on the EDRR list, which is the Early Detection Rapid Response. So those plants are plants kind of more hyper locally that we think that might move into our area from another area. So say they're south of us and we think that they might be moving north, then we would put those on our EDRR list and work towards moving those like more than other plants because they're an early detection rapid response. So you want to kind of attack those more vigorously than stuff that's already kind of in your area. So we also do tabling at local events. So like the Wetlands Festival, we'll have volunteers table there, and different just local things will show up and just try and spread awareness on invasive species, because lots of community members don't even know what an invasive plant species is. So getting the word out on, safe plants to plant in your yard, and how to maybe remove ones that you have in your yard that you didn't know were invasive, or maybe you do. So just, data like that, we try to just educate the community. So next slide. So if you're interested in joining your local CISMA, which would probably be Central Florida, if you're here for the Seminole County Couple Fern chapter, then you can send me an email, and we would love to get you on our email list to let you know about different meetings or events that we're a part of. We're always looking for more volunteers. Similar to the Native Plant Society, we're fully volunteer run. Like a lot of us work in this field, but we volunteer our time. So if anyone is interested in becoming a member and being involved, then reach out to me at any time, send me an email, and we'll get you on the board. So another thing that hopefully a lot of you are familiar with is EdMaps. So we push EdMaps a lot so we can try and track like where these species are moving. So this is real-time tracking of where these occurrences are. It's really cool what technology is capable of these days. So this is local and national distribution maps. This is a nationwide app that's really cool. You can download the app, or you can submit these online through EdMaps. So you just kind of say, where you are, what the plant was. And this is a great way for us to track the movement of these species. And there's also assistance with identification. And then management information as well on that website. So the next slide will just be a little bit of information about the app. So the EdMaps app is the Ive Got One app. So you can download this and record invasive species wherever you go, which is kind of cool. One thing that I love about native plants and invasive plants is like, the more you know, you're kind of always quizzing yourself. It's like you're never alone on the trail because you got all your plant friends there. So with the Ive Got One app, you can kind of collect and share this information with people that are working on these invasive species. So it's just a super helpful database for people trying to battle these invasives. All right, next slide. So the last couple resources I wanted to share with you guys are the UF resources. So there's the plants.ifis.ufl.edu is a great site for plant identification videos, help with management plans, current UF research. So there's native and invasive plants on that page, and it's a great resource for IDing plants. And then there's the assessment page. So this kind of gives like a risk assessment of different invasive species. So if you're not sure like what risk a plant might pose, you can look up that plant on the assessment page, and there will be a whole like 3-page checklist basically that gives you kind of an outline of the risk that that plant poses. And those are pretty much the resources that I wanted to share with you guys today, our local and national invasive species. It's we can't do it alone. This is a big, group project nationally and locally. So like I said, if anyone's interested in joining our CISMA, we're always looking for more volunteers. So shoot us an email. And I think that concludes our information.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, we are huge proponents of the UF system here at Couplet Fern. So the Ive Got One app is something we constantly preach about, and the EdMaps is great. I had a question for you. Personally, what do you prefer, iNaturalist or EdMaps?
I like iNaturalist better just because that's the one I'm used to using. But as far as like marking invasives, EdMaps is definitely the way to go. But for plant ID, I typically use iNaturalist.
That's right. That's right. We do the same.
Yeah.
Gonna post some questions for y'all. Folks, if you are listening, if you have any questions, this is a great time to kind of ask away. These are your public representatives for your beautiful parks and natural area properties. So if you're watching this, you're listening to this from the comfort of your home, simply comment away and we can take some questions live before we conclude the program. Rory Trumbore, who happens to be one of our members, he writes, and this I believe is for Allegra, walling a trail as soon as after a burn affords the opportunity to see many species that have just been waiting to sprout. Grass springs come to mind. And then he also adds, it would be nice to see a schedule of post-burn opportunities. So Allegra, would you like to kind of respond to that?
Yeah, I was reading that as Amanda was talking, and I really like that idea. I love seeing grass pinks as well, and as Rory knows, they're only available, or they're only out for about a week or two after they sprout, about 3 to 4 weeks after a burn, and they're only out for a week or two after that. So it's a very limited time in which to see them. And I like the idea of a schedule of post-burn opportunities for viewing. I know that I send something to our public outreach person about each fire, and she posts on Nextdoor and Facebook that we're burning on the property, and it gets posted on our website. It probably stays on Facebook. I'm not sure which Facebook site that is. Yeah, I don't have Facebook, so but I'm sure it's on there. But I will look into maybe seeing if we can put a schedule, or maybe saying, okay, these are some great trails right now to see post-burn effects, or maybe even at the property, come up with a list of when we last burned some of these zones, so you can kind of see the changes over time, or this is what it looks like 1 year after fire, something like that. So I really like that idea. And I actually already copied that comment over into a little email for myself. That's why I got distracted, Amanda. Sorry. So I am taking note of that for sure. Thank you.
Well, great. Yeah. And, sometimes with fire specialists, they just have to take advantage of the weather. Like here in Florida, it's so unpredictable. So if the weather conditions are right, I'm sure you guys say burn now because we don't know when you can come out again.
I mean, yeah, it's a day before decision, sometimes an afternoon before decision, and then it's just like a rush to get everything done that day. And that's when planning plays a good role because okay, you need this wind direction for this zone, and we have that. So okay, these are the zones that we can do. We already have the prescription written, which makes it a lot easier. For sure. So yeah, always last minute.
Joy writes, Joy, I'm not sure what you're alluding to here, but she says that'd be a great field trip for students. Are you saying post-fire burn, Joy, or are you kind of referring to something else? Not sure.
I know there are some fire fests in the state where they do actually prescribe burn while people are there so that they can see the actual process. Jonathan Dickinson State Park in South Florida, I think does this annually. And I think there's going to be one in Gainesville this coming January-ish. I don't think a date's been decided and they're kind of waiting to see what's happening with COVID, but there are opportunities for that post-burn. Yeah.
At UCF, we also have options for post-burn tours through the Arboretum. On the UCF Arboretum website, you can sign up for a tour, and if you're interested in a specific time after burn, we could work with a group to make that happen. We do burns usually in the early summer months and then in winter months. So if someone were interested in something like that, we could possibly set something up in the winter once our second burn season of the year gets off. So we could possibly, set something up for 2 weeks post burn. It's really cool to see everything growing back at that time too, because it's like a charred landscape with little green things popping up. It's really cool to see.
That's really cool, Amanda. I like that.
Sign us up. I had a question regarding CISMA. You had mentioned that they have a grass ID workshop. And Amanda, I do recall reading about the grass ID workshop and the early detection workshops. Can you give us a little bit more information? I know they're very popular and they do book up ahead of time, but as native plant enthusiasts, this would be something that is really up our alley.
Yeah, so obviously because of COVID, we're going to be doing the grass ID workshop web-based this year. So I think it's going to be on Zoom. I'm not sure how many people we can fit in our Zoom, depending on what type of account people have. We can fit more people. But we're working right now on filming the grass ID portion in the field, because we typically do like the first half of the day is learning about the different parts of the grasses, different types of grasses, and then like their growth habits and how to identify them. And then we'll do the afternoon portion out in the field. So we're filming the field portion, and the rest will be live on Zoom. But I can let you know when we have the date set and everything, and you can put it out to see if any of your members want to attend, which I'm sure they would be interested.
Yeah, I'm so excited that it's virtual this year because it fills up so fast. And I would try to send people working in the field, every day doing this stuff, and they couldn't get in. So it's really exciting that we'll be able to fit more people this year for sure.
Yeah. In a way, COVID has really helped increase and speed up these educational classes without the commitment of drive time. I mean, there is a caveat because we don't have the experiential or hands-on learning portion, but at least we can attend the class. Spare us a little bit of commute time, but yeah, we're definitely interested. Folks, we are wrapping things up. If you have any other questions, now is the time. If you have enjoyed the program, please consider joining Couplet Fern. Go to fnps.org. And if you are in our community, then definitely come discover native plants with Couplet Fern. And if you're watching this statewide, here's our donation information on the screen too. So if you have PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, if you'd like to donate, every dollar helps. It keeps us going. Most of our outreach is free as well. So Amanda, Allegra, I'd like to leave you guys with any parting words that you'd like to offer the community, ways to get in touch, anything else that you would feel the community should know at this point?
If you are interested, like I said, in the Arboretum tours, you can find us at arboretum.ucf.edu. And also, if we have any mountain bikers out there, we are working on a mountain biking trail on campus. So just wanted to plug that as well.
Yeah, and I apologize, I didn't put any contact information for myself, but my email is abuyer@Seminole County. I'll send it to you, Mark, so you could send it out to folks if they're interested. But some of our information's on our website as well. And I've only been in this position about 6 months, so I'm really looking forward to working with a lot of you in the future, either in the garden or out at Spring Hammock, and really looking forward to meeting you once this pandemic hopefully comes to a close soon. So.
That's right. That's right. In a way, we've spared you from all our plant talk, because once we start, there's no end. So just be warned.
All right, give me a little time to get settled in. So,
Yeah,
but I'm looking forward to it for sure. Yeah.
Well, folks, thank you so much. This was a very quick and easy presentation. Amanda, Allegra, I can't thank you enough for your time, especially on a Monday night. And keep up the great work, and we'll see you real soon.
Awesome.
Great, thanks, Mark.
All right, guys, bye for now. We'll talk to you some other time. Take care.
Bye.